It's Thursday in Simpsonville, South Carolina, and it's going to be cold. Starting tonight, the temperature's going to drop down into the 30s, and so it's going to be cold here. The winter's not over yet. Isn't it interesting how God works in your circumstances to drive home points? My wife asked me, she said, "Could you get me something for Valentine's Day?" And I said, "Of course I was wanting to." And she said, "Well, I'd like a card shuffler." And I said, "Well, okay." And I found out that she's been playing a game called Hand and Foot with a number of the ladies here in the development, and having a good time at it. And one of the things that happens is they use 6 decks of cards, and it's difficult to shuffle all of those decks of cards. And so I went online and I began to look at the different card shufflers. I saw some from as cheap as $8.95 to as expensive as $140, and started to read all of the reviews by each of the ones, and found that there was a lot of different counsels from a lot of different people about which ones were good and which ones were not good. And it didn't seem to coincide necessarily with price. Some of the reviews of the $12 and $17 ones were just as good as the reviews on the $140 ones. As a matter of fact, sometimes the ones on the $140 ones were worse reviews than the ones on the cheap ones. Nevertheless, it brought me to the very message that was sitting on my desk, which was care of counsel. Care of counsel means we got to be careful where we get our counseling from. During the investigation of the card shuffler, I got a lady that said she was glad she paid more because hers was doing so much better than her previous one. Another person wrote that they had spent a lot more to get a good one, and that they wished they had just gone ahead and got another cheap one because it was no better workmanship and no better workings than the one that they paid less money for. And it's difficult when you get a lot of different kinds of counsel. And so the whole point of this is be careful where you get your counsel, and be careful how you apply it to your life. Solomon got very wise counsel from his father David, and we know that he followed a lot of it in the fact that when he asked God for what God was willing to give him, he asked for wisdom to minister to God's people. We also know that Solomon didn't follow all of his father's counsel, that he made some mistakes later in life. When we look at other people like Rehoboam, we find that he got counsel from the elders, which was to be kind to the people and treat them properly. And he got counsel from the younger men, which was to get even tougher than his father had been on the people. We know the story, and we know that Rehoboam decided to follow the younger men, and it was a bad choice. We also know that he repented later and decided to be a better king, and he was a better king. So there's a lot of wisdom in getting counsel. And we know that Rehoboam, when he repented, got counsel from a prophet that God sent. I would recommend to you that you find godly people for your counsel. If you're going to go looking for advice, try to find somebody that's a godly person that seems to be in touch with God. Certainly it's better if you can get it directly from God, if you can go to him in prayer and ask him for wisdom and ask him for guidance. But remember, lots of times he speaks through people. And so I would just challenge you today to think about, number one, where are you getting counsel? Number two, are you listening to that counsel? And after all, the elders tried to tell Rehoboam to not be so tough on the people. And it was wise counsel, but he neglected to follow it. He followed the counsel of those that were not so wise. So it's important not only where we go for our counsel and whether they're godly people or not, but then we have to follow counsel. If we're going to ask for it, whether we get it from God or whether we get it from a person that he's assigned to bring us that message, we need to be careful that we follow that counsel. And that if we find that we followed the wrong kind of counsel, to not be afraid to admit that we were wrong and to reverse directions. When you think about getting counsel, when you think about getting advice, remember it's very, very important you get it from the right person. and if at all possible, to get it directly from God. And then to be very, very careful that you follow the counsel. If you really think it's from God, be sure to obey what he's given to you in the way of counsel. That's your thought for the day. God bless you and have a great day.